straightening, we're starting to straighten up because I tried.
That's nice.
And, okay, that seems fine. All right.
A big turnout.
Yeah.
I'll let you know.
Slackers. What are all these people taking vacation? If you put your documents up, they're not gonna be able to see Mike. Oh, no, maybe he'll go in the corner, I'm sorry. We'll see.
Send them to the You're going to it.
Are we gonna be able to get 3 signatures? I guess
Okay.
So here, your two up here.
Elizabeth's coming, so, yeah.
You want 'em?
Jeff,
You want 'em?
I gave you the report, and then here's a set of bills if you wanna sign them. And I'll be sending the rest
I
down.
have the ones in March that I sent.
This is the 2019.
Realize there's that much space between all of them.
I know.
Okay.
Job.
Don't lose, do not lose that.
I will not lose that, I won't touch that.
Okay.
I will not touch that.
Sorry. See, you got this, just,
Get
everyone's getting finished with that, bring it back.
any higher after.
The mayor, the mayor. Right? No, you guys can all use this, just I want to make sure that someday. I just want to make sure we get it back. That I have. We're all recording now.
Okay.
Jeff, you need the gavel down there?
Oh, here.
Do you need this?
Gravel.
The gravel. This is, we're supposed to get Elizabeth, but you can start, because this is just the, Jeff and Mike are the two.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mike's here.
There he is, yeah.
Yeah, he's in the little corner. Until
we've cornered.
Richard's done his documents, then we can make him bigger.
Okay.
You wanna make it bigger right now?
I think Elizabeth's coming.
So I'll do this.
She said she was, didn't she?
Said she was.
Yeah.
We're gonna do 2 awards here.
Is he here?
Yeah. Jeff, you want to start as the,
We'll call the meeting of the Finance and Budget Committee to order. Have a roll call.
Counselor Kelly,
Here.
Counselor Moore,
Here.
Mayor Reed,
Present.
Counselor Armstrong,
Here.
Counselor Gibbs, Counselor Insel, Counselor McFarland.
Okay, we have the reports from department representatives and discussion with the counselors. Richard?
Okay. The first thing I wanted to cover was financial information that I just updated today
Wow.
and sent out, which shows the general fund now at a $491,000 surplus for 2018. The only numbers that actually changed, I changed water and sewer a little bit because there was an inter-fund transfer that had to be done from the general fund, but also the general fund gained a $50,000 surplus because we had to reduce reserve for the potential write-off for property taxes. It's an allowance that we have to maintain because of accounting principles. I don't really see the necessity of it at all because we never lose property taxes because we would always foreclose on properties to regain our property tax losses. But anyway, it added $50,000 because the reserve went down from 150 to 100, and that's the reason why we have gone up roughly $50,000 in this number since the last time we spoke. So that's looking like the final number, and with that addition to the fund balance, plus the changes in the reserves, we're looking at having about an $830,000 available fund balance once we close the books for 2018. So we'll have gone up from $236,000 to roughly $830,000, or about a $600,000 increase. So it's a pretty positive year for 2018. There's nothing else that I see that has to be done with the numbers except to just true up, do fund balances and do all the reporting. We're going to try and have the books closed and rolled forward by the end of this week, beginning of next week, so we can finalize the AUD report and get it to the state. by the end of April.
So
Compared
that's
to
about
last
a,
year,
it's about a 2% fund balance as a share of the general fund?
800, the general fund expenditures are 23 million, so about an $830,000 would be what? 5% would be, 10% would be 2.3 million, 5% would be 1.15 million, 2.5%. We've got 500,000, so it's about what, 3.5%?
Okay.
Kind of just spitballing there. So I mean, it's climbing. It's going. You know, it went down from 700,000 in 2016, bottomed out at 236,000 in 17, which we knew when we predicted to Moody's when we went and discussed our bond rating with them, and we said that that year would be the turnaround year, sort of go back up in 2018, and of course, it's coming true. So adding about 600,000, once again, is positive. And of course, we budgeted for adding 500,000 surplus in 2019, provided the numbers come out the way we budgeted.
Mhm. Good.
2017, you can see the results were a lot different. It was a $308,000 loss in the general fund. So to swing from a $308,000 loss to a $491,000 operating surplus, it's a big swing. Now you guys have all gotten a copy of this, and you can look at all the details that I put along with this. You know, there's tons and tons of numbers to pour over. But actually what we're looking for is the bottom line at this point, because we're just about finished with rolling things forward. One of the things that's holding me up right now is the analysis of the future healthcare costs in retirement. Just can't get the people to finish the report. Keep asking questions. The lady that's taking it over seems to be wanting to kind of like make a career out of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's just an estimate, please get on with it. So I think we'll get that out of them by the end of this week, beginning of next week. Supposed to have it several weeks ago. But I've had to go through the census about 5 times now.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a nightmare. You know, 800 listings of people's benefits and what plans they're in and what plans they're not in, and you know, it keeps on changing and keeps on morphing, and it's like, come on, let's get it done.
Does your AUD for the state require that information?
Yeah. It requires all the principal points of the report, and MLD actually has to book an actual liability based on their portion of it, since they're a real company, as opposed to a governmental company. So they're also waiting for what's the final numbers.
Mhm.
So that's the last piece of the books for them for 2018. So I think I should have it by Monday. So that's the news for December of 18. And of course, we saw this before in the department head meeting for March of 2019. And I went over why there was such a poor result in the general fund. There's some large expenditures that are hitting the general fund costs this year. Number one was the fire raises that were paid, that were a result of the arbitration from 2012 and 2013. And there's also, and I haven't offset those costs yet completely. See, here's the fire, you can see where it's a big, big number. And then also, we have $395,000 that we posted to the assessment department because of a pass-through of funding to Clinton County for future assessment services. We're supposed to get an FRB refund on that, reimbursement on that, that'll offset that. But I'm leaving it in there in case we don't get that money, so that's an impact. I'm supposed to have a larger offset in this account that I have to work off the numbers, because that's going to be the offset for paying the fire raises. The fire raises supposedly all have to go into payroll, so they're going to affect this number. but the offset to reduce the liability of $1,093,000 that we booked last year for recognizing all the costs for the fire arbitrations and raises in 2018 is gonna be an offset in this number as well. And then we also have,
So I'd asked yesterday, I think you guys are going back and forth, have the firefighters' calculation all been completed, and is everybody satisfied at this point for the interest on the retro?
as far as I know, we're sending out the last 7 payments for the interest. Haven't heard anything back that they don't like the calculations.
Scott, do you know anything about those calculations and what the firefighter's position is?
Calculations being honored at all, so.
I think Brett's been poring over them. They're complicated. I don't know if you took a look at that worksheet that we sent out.
No, I've been trying to avoid it. I figured I'd better leave
I
that to
would
the
too if I were
experts.
you. I would
Yeah.
avoid it at all possible costs because it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
But you're welcome to pour over it. It's grueling to do that kind of thing
Mhm.
and then check it and verify it and then determine, what everybody has to be paid and then figure out what the interest on it would be from June 25th, 2017 forward
Right.
for elements that are paid up to that date. And then for every element paid after that date, a graduated reduced term for the 9%.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
We should have got a banker to do the calculations.
I think you're mentioning the last thing I saw from you, that it wasn't a huge amount. It was like $4,000 or $5,000 for 7 firefighters or something.
$4,000, $4,071. We weren't paying those last 7 because we thought that since they didn't have any elements of 2012 or 13 pay, and 2 of them weren't even paid anything prior to 2018, that they wouldn't really have the interest increment due to them. But of course, the fire union attorneys say, well, everybody deserves to get paid, so, and Brian said, why argue about it? So we
Another thing
paid-
that came out today, you just raised the assessment, our transfer to the county for assessment. We received a bill from, or exploration of whether we will receive a bill from county, for postage and mailers or envelopes. Is it our understanding that they pay those incidentals, or we pay?
I'd have to look through the terms of the contract specifically. I do recall there was an oral understanding that they would not be including postage, but I'm going to rely on the specific language in the contract that resent it to me today. I didn't have a chance to look at it yet, though.
There's another area for offsets that are going to be higher charges. Right here, community development, you'll see, we'll start to gather some charges. There's some in there now for the white group, and for Crane Associates, I believe it's done. But it's also Saratoga Associates we're still working with. So those charges are going to go in there and be accumulated once again for us to transfer them to a receivable at the end of the year for the submissions to the DRI refunding or reimbursement. So anyway, the results are pretty negative when you look at $2.5 million loss in the first 3 months compared to last year. In the general fund, where it's only $503,000 lost. But then again, we've got large items in there that are skewing the results. So it's, it's something that we just have to settle on the offset that's gonna happen here to take out all the fire costs. And we're gonna look at that all year as 2 big anomalies. And then this one, we're hoping to get reimbursed by the county, from the Financial Restructuring Board for the county assessment costs that take us through the year 2020, I believe. And then also the reimbursements that we're gonna be getting for the CD costs.
On top of those, is Ethan's salary, at least a good portion of Ethan's salary reimbursable from DRI? Are those-
Yeah, part of Eva's, part of mine.
Yeah,
We did get our first reimbursement from the DRI, it was $13,500, so that's a positive number. We finally did get some money from New York State.
Yeah, it was about a 6-month turnaround on the reimbursement, so
That's
that's what
expected.
we can expect going forward.
Yeah. So, and that'll be good if it stays at 6
We'll all be
months.
retired.
So anyway, the other results should be more consistent with operations. When you look at our complex, they're 33,000 ahead for March. A lot of that's to do with the contributions that are coming in from the general fund in the form of the revenue transfers. There's $621,000 of revenue being transferred, and to date it's $156,000. That's half of their revenue budget, so it's going to show positive results for the rec complex fund, I think, for a major part of the year. Just a matter of how well the programs work out. The parking lot revenue was positive, everybody is positive. Water is very small. Sewer certainly strong as usual. Library is consistent. And of course the water fund, we're talking about the rates, and John's been presenting information about what we're going to do about that. So the results for March of 2019 don't look awfully bad. Parking lot revenue always looks like it's off the board at this point in the year because so much of their revenue is collected with the property taxes for the SAD portion of the taxes to the downtown properties. Any questions about any of the numbers? I know it's a lot to digest and it's a lot that we pour over, but any questions, comments? The other thing that I wanted to go over was there's a 46-page report here for the refunding of 2009 and 2011 serial bonds that are issued and outstanding by the city. Just merely means we're going to refinance them, and the proposal to refinance them would result in savings on an annual basis in this projected cash flow. It averages about $42,000 a year as it goes out to the year 2030.
So the
Total.
savings is 42,000 a year?
Yes.
Okay.
The net number is 463,000, as you can see on the screen here, projected, divided by, I think it was 11 years, it's about 42,000 in debt service. It's not a huge amount of money, but for a $25,000 or $30,000 refinancing cost, we can save that debt service over the next 11 years just by refinancing these bonds.
It's one position. If you're that one person, it's probably very significant. Also, you're looking at getting a better return on our surplus funds, and I think that the comparable additional revenue from that's going to be significant as well, so that should help out.
When you look at the interest rates that we're retiring, the 2009 rates are the highest. That's where we're saving the majority of the dollars. The 2011 rates aren't as high, and I think the average rate we're using is about 2.36 going forward for the refunding.
That doesn't change the terms either, it still expires at the same time. So
Same
this is
term,
just
that's right. That's
simple
right.
apples to apples savings for the city.
2030 is the last date. And the amounts, remain the same, it's just different interest. You pay a premium to the holders of the bonds to be able to do this, and that's part of the upfront cost that we look at.
Now,
So
the
it's
date that we're allowed to do this was in July of this year that we are able to do this?
Yeah. They're planning to have this, I think, set out by September. Yeah. By September 15th. This is where our bond agent and our bond counsel go to work and pull this all together, and then all we have to do is transfer the funds from one debt service to the other. It's a lot of information, there's a lot of calculations.
So just so the council understands, this isn't like refinancing your house where you take 15 years of your mortgage and extend it for another 30 years. This is really apples to apples. We're not extending the length of these loans at all. This is absolutely just straight money in the bank. There's no gimmicks involved at all. Taking advantage of lower interest rates for bonds of the same term.
It'd be the equivalent of going to your bank and saying, I want to reduce my interest rate on my debt for the rest of the term, and then
Yeah.
saying, sure, pay me a little premium and we'll let you do it.
Yeah.
So,
And we weren't eligible to do this up until now, and interest rates are still very favorable. If we exercise this option later on, probably interest rates are going to rise, so this really came at an opportune time for us.
We still owe quite a bit on these debts, 11,190,000. Significant portion of the 2009 debt is NLDs. The 2011 debt is spread amongst all the funds except for NLD. So there's a lot of information there. If you have any questions about it, feel free to ask. Don't hesitate to call. It's a ton of numbers, obviously, but the key piece of information is on page 5 where it says what our savings is going to be over the life of the debt, which is going to be the $463,000 figure that I quoted you right there, 463,536, and there's the expected cash flows from it, showing the annual savings each year. Any questions on that?
How did we get on this path? Was that your resourceful research, or?
Our bond agent and our bond counsel are always looking
Okay.
at our issued and outstanding debt, and they're always triggering on the refunding dates. I think it's 10 years you're allowed to go into it. 9 years you're allowed to go into it, and they take a look at that and say, hey, it's time to do it,
Good.
based on how the interest rates have moved in the market. We've refunded 2 issues so far. No, actually 3. We did one from 2001, we did it in 2009, and we did one from 2004 and 2006 in the year 2016. So this will be the 4th and 5th zero bond issues we refunded 3 times, on 3 occasions. So it's something that's just geared to saving the debt service dollars long term.
Any other questions?
Almost used up all half an hour now.
Thank you for the explanation. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chamber of Mars, and thank you for saving us some money.
Well, our bond agents and bond counsel should get the credit for it because, like I said, they're the ones that are gonna do the work. We're gonna pay them for it though, obviously. This is also business for them. How do I make Mike bigger? Here?
Just click on the, no, on down on the Skype on the bottom. See him?
There he is.
It's big, all right.
Who is our bond agent, Rich?
Noah.
Noah Nadelson's his name. The name of his company is Munistat. We've been dealing with them forever.
Okay.
Our bond counsel we changed to Oric Harrington from New York City. Doug Goodfriend is our bond counsel.
Is the bond agent down in NYC too?
Long Island.
Okay.
They're headquartered in Long Island.
They also help us with the negotiations with the bond rating agencies, which we'll probably end up doing this fall again.
Yeah, they take an active interest in representing the city of Plattsburgh. It's always been one of their favorite entities to represent because we think that we have a special set of circumstances up here in the North Country, insulated from the normal economic conditions that the rest of the world suffers from or enjoys.
Thanks.
Okay.
Was there any other questions for Chamber of Mars? If not, we'll move on to agenda items brought forward from the departments to be approved by committee and recommended to council. Item 1, request from SIP to use 2 parking spaces in front of their establishment for outdoor dining. Number 2, request from the Director of Community Development, Matthew Miller, that the mayor be authorized to sign change order number 3, the post remediation monitoring and final engineering report contract with CT Mail in the amount of $2,600. And request from the city chamberlain to adopt a refunding bond resolution, which he just explained to us, for the purpose of creating savings for the city's future debt service from 2009 and 2011 serial bonds currently issued and outstanding. The anticipated saving is estimated at $463,536 for the period beginning September 15th, 2019 through December 31st, 2030. The resolution form and refunding issue projections are attached as supporting documentation for consideration of the bond resolution. I guess I'll make a motion to move these out of committee and recommend to the council.
I'll second.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Reed?
Yes?
Don't have any old business, and we don't have any new business, so does anyone else have any new business for the finance committee? If not, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the finance committee meeting.
I'll second.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes,
Mayor Reed?
Yes?
meeting is adjourned.
45 seconds, and we'll begin our public hearing tonight.
And counting?
Don't set it all in place. Let's begin tonight's public hearing for the Common Council. The City of Plattsburgh is holding a public hearing to hear public comment on proposed local law P4, a local law to provide for the codification of the local laws, ordinances, and certain resolutions of the City of Plattsburgh into a municipal code to be designated the Code of the City of Plattsburgh. Any members of the public that please like to comment on the code consolidation, please come forward. Seeing none, I'll declare this public hearing closed. We can then begin our work session for tonight. Is there anything that council would like to have an extended discussion on within the agenda?
Well, I have a question regarding the motion to remove item 7A from the table. Just wondering what people think regarding that, especially in the light of the fact that we have a couple of absences, and whether or not we have sufficient information to go forward.
Well, are we still meeting tomorrow? Did you?
Well, planning on it.
You still plan? Okay.
Yeah.
So Jeff and I had actually talked about meeting tomorrow to talk about what I had suggested last week about maybe coming up with some very specific criteria. So we had planned on meeting tomorrow regarding that. And I don't know if you had a chance to see Brian Kremer's response
I did.
to my request. So I think his response is this is all, pretty standard practice and very kind of straightforward. I don't feel like we're ready to move on this yet.
No. Okay, good. That was just a question I had, because I came prepared with some comments and I would save them. Or maybe I'll read
But,
them now.
that's just me. I don't think we're ready, but if you have other ideas and you want to express them, go ahead.
No, we're still discussing it, so I agree that we need to.
So, I'd just like to get an indication of where your thinking is going, because if I know that part of your concern was that there was no instrument for, instrument for actually applying a formula or a rubric so that the performance evaluations could be translated into some kind of mechanism that would express a raise? Is that your
Yeah.
understanding?
Yeah,
Okay.
and, I've read some of the things that you forwarded to the council. I haven't had a chance to get through everything that you forwarded.
I know, it's
but
big homework assignment,
No,
isn't it?
no, I'm on vacation right now. So I'm kind of up in the air right now
Yeah.
about, where I stand. I'm still in the information
Yeah,
gathering.
you're still weighing it.
I am.
Mhm.
And I think it would just be very important that whatever we decide is very fully vetted, so it doesn't seem capricious.
I think that's
And
wise.
I think that it's very important that our city managers know that we're not going to change payroll or I'm sorry, not payroll, but the way that they're compensated whimsically or with the change of council, or you know what I mean, because they deserve better than that. So I just want to make sure that we do all of our homework and our due diligence before we make any changes, if we make any changes. That's how I feel about it.
I hope you will consider the things that I've sent you because, and I really appreciate the articles that you sent, Mayor. And I just want to say out front that I'm not against performance and outcome-based systems. And I really am in favor of having some kind of process by which we, in community, set goals and figure out measures for outcomes. And I think we need measurable outcomes, and I think we need data-driven decision-making. And that's just as a general rule for the way in which we operate as a city. And in a way, I think we were kind of headed that way with regard to our explorations into OpenGov. And I hope we can revisit that. It kind of got stalled in our Finance Committee conversations with the mayor. But I think that's worth revisiting. I know Councilor Moore and I are in really serious agreement about the benefits of that kind of software to provide us data and so forth. But in the same vein, performance evaluation does give us some kind of indication of how certain goals have been achieved and to what extent. And I think that's good. And I think that eventually I would hope that these goals could be tied into citywide goals and objectives. I found a study published by the National League of Cities, their Center for City Solutions and Applied Research. It's all about performance management, a guide for city leaders. That's something I can forward to you if I haven't already. But they say in terms of how to run a city, connect performance management to community vision, commit political and financial capital to the process, make the budget process transparent, and so forth. So those, I think that we all want measurable outcomes. That's not any of my disagreement with going to level 4 at all. But I think if you look at the research across the board over decades, that you will find that it's at best inconclusive, that a merit-based or performance-based measures, as they're tied to assigning raises after a particular wage has been set, it's really inconclusive. I sent you The Paradox of Merit Pay in the Public Sector, a Persistence of a Problematic Procedure by J. Edward Kellogg and Horan Liu. It was actually published in 1993, and it was an evaluation of how the federal government had instituted this kind of system. And it didn't take long before researchers began to seriously consider how effective it was as a way of motivating personnel, as a way of attracting and retaining personnel. So this study is really very extensive and complete and has a summary of many good studies. But it was so good that it was republished in the Review of Public Personnel Administration at Penn State in May of 2016. But here's some things I want to point out to you. That there's no evidence that you're going to get the outcomes you want from having this kind of system. Now, last week when you said that, somebody suggested, I think it was Councilor Kelly, suggested that we can save money by doing this. I still think we need to explore how that would be achieved. You know, by what measure, by, you know, what accounting do we really get that as a result? But the fact is, there's a lack of objective data that's at the foundation of replacing a regular step system and graded sets of raises with one that is arbitrary and dependent strictly upon one sole administrator. You have to remember that. I mean, we have a mayor who supervises our managers, and the question is how objective, regardless of the kind of instrument you use, is that kind of evaluation going to be? According to Lane and Wolf in 1990, they found that sometimes to avoid conflict and maintain good relations with subordinates, many supervisors tend to inflate ratings. And there's a whole kind of body of research that suggests that it's really hard to be objective. I just read something, I think I mentioned King County, Washington State uses merit pay not entirely as a means of assigning raises, but they found out, this is just like a current evaluation of their program, 70% of the employees received the highest rating. And that was found in earlier research too. Perry in 1989 found that 99% of employees in the U.S. General Service Administration received ratings of fully successful or above. And then those employees were eligible for merit increases. And so the question is, does that mean then maybe everybody's going to be good and so the raises are in fact automatic? And the studies have found there's no standard criteria for comparing employees and distributing merit pay. Increased emphasis on performance evaluation can erode the level of trust between management and employees necessary for establishing requisite performance outcome expectancies. The U.S. Merit Protection Board found in 1990, and this is after almost a decade of having this kind of salary system in place, 47% of federal employees surveyed lacked trust and confidence in their immediate supervisors. Well, that's just a little taste of what that one study says, but one of the reasons why, even though there's such disagreement among researchers and practitioners about the effectiveness of this system, why does it still remain was one of the main points of this article. And I thought this was a really interesting point. Fox and Miller argue in 1992 that the concept is symbolically and politically attractive. That, you know, and especially in a municipality, you can see how that might play out. That we've got a certain set of leaders who come in every so often and they have a particular disposition, and that fluctuation, you know, can influence either positively or negatively this kind of system. And do we want that kind of instability? So Perry in 1988 and 89 found that merit pay is a symbol of government's attempt to control the bureaucracy. It is a symbolic response to public perceptions of bureaucratic inefficiency and demands for accountability. So I think what they're trying to suggest here is that we're all trying to get at something that's good, but the question is, does this really achieve that goal? Or are we just trying to react to that push from the public? And how can we get to a better system? I think it's going to take a lot of research, and we can get it. And I'm dry, and I have to take some water.
Just to clarify for the managers though, all existing employees are exempt from this resolution. This
Mhm.
only applies to new employees.
Oh,
So,
absolutely, I know
in
that.
case there's any doubt, I don't believe that we should promise employees one regime and then switch gears once they're
No.
here. I've always believed in grandfathering.
I understand that,
employees.
yes, and I'm sure you made that same statement last week, and I know they were reassured by it. Another
And-
point you made was that this doesn't implement any system, but what it does is leave wide open a system that's undefined, and I think that's not wise.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion on any other items on the agenda for tonight? As you saw, there was one more permit request. There's still the existing permit requests for parking that were put forward towards this meeting from last week. And one additional one.
So the parking request from, not parking, but the, little parklet request from the food co-op. Now, they originally wanted two. Am I remembering that correctly?
No,
No,
they
they
wanted
always
one.
wanted one, okay.
Mhm.
So did we get a final answer about?
I
The-
hadn't
oh,
heard.
okay.
Had anybody else heard?
Joe's not the
Joe, okay.
I think he's here, right, Ryan?
Yeah, he's right outside.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so he's gonna speak during the meeting, or
Yes.
you want, okay, you
Would
want
you
to
like them
speak
to speak
now?
now?
Yeah,
There's no
sure.
reason why I should wait around.
So I think the issue was a safety concern, and I think it's because there's that crosswalk right there.
Right.
As I was walking today, and I recognized it, I think that's what it is.
Yeah, so that, coming especially from the corner there, it's hard if somebody's starting out right where that blind spot is.
Right.
Hello,
Is that
Ryan.
Is that something to be ratified by moving the parklets somewhat up or down?
So maybe we need the question answered. Did Joe explain to you what the safety concerns were?
Yes.
Would you mind coming to the podium? Okay.
I can read it later when it comes up if you like, or whatever works for you guys.
What do you think?
Time's now, go ahead.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
there's actually more time now.
Sure, great, I'd love
Okay.
to. Yeah, okay, so, here to address, I'm Ryan Murs, the general manager of the co-op, we all know that. Here to address some of the concerns that were brought up with the parklet application for the co-op, so let's address them. Concern number one, I think, was about the music in the parklet. Should I do my concerns, or do you want to skip ahead to the other stuff? Because I have a couple of them.
Just go ahead.
Cool,
Do
making
whatever
sure
you
it's cool.
plan.
All right, so I haven't heard any complaints about music in the parklet. The music we have is on Saturdays 11 to 1, and sometimes during the week, usually on Tuesdays, but always in the daytime and always during the allowable hours. I would have assumed that anybody having issues with the music being played from the parklet would contact the co-op management, myself, or Cam, or whomever, and not Councilor Ensel or whoever.
Yeah,
If
what's
this is
the
no longer
council?
allowed in order for us to go forward, we're amenable to ending music in the parklet. But if that's the case, I want to state my objection for the record, because we believe summer music in the parklet enhances the downtown experience, the community experience. The next concern was no outdoor dining. Last week, Councilor Ensel had concerns of the little or no utilization of our parklet, and I feel this claim is speculative, as I think you brought up, which I appreciate. As someone who spends a significant amount of time at the co-op and has close connections to people who are there when I'm not present, I can assure you that I can assure the council that the parklet is used quite frequently. As Councilor Armstrong pointed out, there are two small tables, you can see them in the application, at which people eat food products sold by our establishment in agreement with the section 233-41 of the local law. There's also a little row of benches on the street side. As for utilization, the co-op's Facebook page cover video shows people enjoying a meal in the parklet. The staff uses it to eat lunch. Adam Kritzer has a young adult student who is a musician and uses the parklet outside during the day as an opportunity to perform publicly. Our board sometimes meets in the parklet during warm evenings in the summer. Cyclists use the parklet to park their bikes, they come in for a snack, and they eat, and they continue off on their ride. There's ample evidence of people using the benches in the parklet after hours as well, and we know this because we cleaned up after them. Food and, containers and all that jazz. And the main concern that was a pedestrian safety concern, if I recall correctly. Councilor Ensel brought up somebody, I just heard it, just vague, almost got hit crossing the road at that walkway because the parklet structure somewhat blinds or obstructs motorist views of pedestrians in the crosswalk. I do agree with him that there are significant safety concerns with that crosswalk. I believe that none are caused by the parklet. I have personally seen motorists accelerating around the corner from City Hall Place onto Bridge Street at a high rate of speed, either completely ignoring pedestrians or being unable to safely stop in time due to their speed. I personally called the police department regarding the issue in the past, as has our third floor residents. As I recall correctly, this may be wrong, but I think I've come before the council to address that concern as well. The safety in that crosswalk, I think I did like a year and a half ago, but I can't remember. But as I said, I share Councilor Ensel's concerns regarding close calls, as customers have come nearly every day to express their concerns regarding the crosswalk. I'm glad the issue was raised by a council member, though, because while I do agree that pedestrian safety should be a priority, it is not a concern that only arises when the parklet is up. We see this year-round.
Okay.
And I'd like to suggest today and on the record that the city do something to account for this dangerous crosswalk. In my ideal solution, I think I brought it up before, would be a raised crosswalk. I know there's complications with that, I get it, but that'd be my ideal situation. Failing that, I'd like to see at least some additional cautions up signs or a sign with lights, or even some new paint in the crosswalk would be a start to get motorists to slow down. Mayor Reed, you did say that there was some potential for traffic calming as part of the DRI process, but did admit that it wasn't fully scoped out yet. I feel that safety concerns should be addressed promptly, but any direction regarding the parklet will not impact the safety situation. But any decision regarding the parklet will not impact the safety concerns we're discussing.
Right.
If that makes sense. So in conclusion, I contacted Joe McMahon regarding the pedestrian safety concerns. Mr. McMahon reached out to the fire chief regarding the hydrant, which was okayed last year and okayed again this year, and the police chief regarding any pedestrian safety concerns. According to Mr. McMahon, and please correct me if I'm wrong, neither of the individuals had concerns that might cause the parklet application to be denied. Additionally, I've come to understand that these concerns have been addressed in years past, both by code enforcement and the former city engineer, leading to our parklet application to be improved twice, once in the middle spot and once where it was last year in the first spot. Therefore, since nothing about our parklet's construction or placement has changed since being approved last year, I don't believe that there should be any further issue regarding these concerns. I'm happy to answer any questions too, if you'd like.
Yeah, I have a suggestion.
Please.
Because as someone who's sat there during the time when there's music, I would suggest that you welcome acoustic music rather than amplified music. I just think the space is so small, in proximity to the sidewalk.
Totally.
And I really understand
I think we've
the
had
musician who loves the amplified effect, but I don't really think it's suitable for that area.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you prefer if we just focused only on acoustic and kind of forget the amplifier?
I think that would,
go forward?
what do you think in terms of, I don't know if it's fair to impose that, that kind of restriction.
I'd recommend you don't tie that into the approval of the park.
Okay.
That's
Oh,
a
no.
separate issue, because any
Yeah.
restaurant could have music, so
Sure.
I don't think this
I
should
agree.
affect your approval at all here.
Right. That's a good point.
we
But just
can
in
certainly
terms
look-
of the overall kind of effect, that's
Yes,
a
the overall
suggestion.
community effect.
Okay.
Yeah, which I
Yeah.
totally understand. I will.
But I think the point about the traffic concerns is well taken. The way in which you describe your issues all year long. And so that it would be more difficult to isolate out the obstruction that may be the parklet as the source of the problem. So,
I feel that.
and I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure we can work out some
think we
kind
have
of
to.
solution.
I feel
agree.
like there was a big truck parked there yesterday, the double tires in the back. It's just as wide and as big as the parklet is. And,
Right.
if cars can park there, the parklet should be able to be there without an issue, I feel.
And, and just in terms of some of the comments about the fact that not a lot of food is eaten there, I don't really regard a parklet as necessarily having to have that feature. I like the fact that you can just sit, and enjoy yourself, even if you just have a beverage of some sort, and take a break, especially if we hope people are coming up from Dock Street, and some of the Mariners, and just take a little break and go on down into the downtown. So, I mean, to me, that's not a big deal. If I wouldn't expect that you be serving 3-course meals there.
Well, no, which of course we don't do.
Of course.
But we do have wraps and sandwiches
Yeah.
and a salad bar and a soup bar and.
And
all
I
that
think
good
it's a
stuff.
really attractive parklet, personally, one
Thank you.
that's a model.
We do work hard on that, so I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I love the parklets in general. When the weather breaks and people have the businesses downtown have the parklets, it's one of my favorite aspects of the downtown area.
Yeah.
It's just so charming. I
It
love
is.
it. So,
Yeah, I agree.
Don't ask Mike and Mike what they think, but never mind.
Well, thank you. Any other further questions on this item?
no, I think you addressed the concerns very clearly and made the case that the safety concern is absolutely not specific to having the parklet there. Thank you for coming in and clearing that up. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me early. No, I appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Cheers.
Would there be any other concerns about the local law P4? I think a number of you have had a chance to meet with
Oh.
Sylvia and Dean over the last week. Are there any lingering questions or concerns on that?
I have to thank Sylvia for, was it 2 years you told me?
More than 2 years.
Team effort, 2 years of team effort.
That's
Thank you so much.
going through it with a fine-tooth comb. If you'll think about that expression, right?
Yep. So, thank you
Yeah,
very
one
much.
Quick thing, the repeal of chapter 24, the community development office, I'm assuming that's the old one that was,
You're
Made redundant
preserved,
when
yeah,
they
don't
reorganized.
worry, you're built into the charter now.
oh, okay. Let's check.
Yeah, you gotta get out of here.
Need to know if I have to come to work tomorrow.
Not that easy.
Any other items for discussion tonight in our work session?
Well, I'm very excited about your resolution tonight, Councilor Armstrong,
thank
about
you.
a climate-smart community. I think this is so fantastic. And
Thank you, Elizabeth.
I look forward to going Monday. I'm going to
Excellent.
bring my son, and
Yeah, and I think one of the most exciting features that will be available that evening is that there are task force members who are already engaged in this process in the Climate Smart program in Saranac Lake. And so one of their task force members is going to be there to describe their process. And I think I told you that Mayor Reed had gone through one of these, once we are, oh shoot, where'd it go? Well, anyway, once we are on our way and engaged in this, we'll immediately begin to embark on some kind of goal setting and action taking. And some of that, as you pointed out many times, we're on our way. We're going to be able to check off a lot of boxes and get a lot of points, and we'll be well on our way to certification as a climate smart community.
well, I look forward to, and I said this to you by email, I really look forward to just continuing to move towards making Plattsburgh just very progressive. It's
Yeah.
a very exciting vision.
Yeah.
And
you.
I think I'm very excited.
Well, I hope y'all can come. I made up some snazzy new posters, and if you want to give them to your friends and neighbors, you can. Of course, you don't live in the city councilor, but
Thank you.
Used to be
Yeah,
very
everybody
involved with
come.
the environmental movement in college.
you did. Okay.
Fantastic.
I went down to the building inspector's office today and got a building permit. She said nobody's ever asked to put solar panels up in the city of Plattsburgh before, so. Well, actually, we worked out with
You
the MLD that people will be permitted to do it. They can't sell the energy back into the grid. It's called net
Right.
metering under our
Right.
system. But we do encourage people to be energy self-sustainable. The economics are more difficult in the city because our electricity is so inexpensive, but if people really feel like they want to do the right thing,
Right.
we want them to be
There's
able to do it in the cities. We are
Nothing
working
like
on that as well.
conservation, right?
So that will be somehow available then, if people want to, like, put solar panels on their house and,
As a matter of fact, Bill Tracy asked for permission from the IEEP rebate program to rebate $500 of the cost of a solar installation as well. So, yeah, this is a program we're assembling right now, and it
That's
fits right in
fantastic.
with
That is
with all
so
of this.
exciting. Thanks for
that
pursuing
is
that.
awesome.
Yeah.
Any other items that you'd like to have extended discussion on in the work session? If not, how about if we call the work session over and invite
Well,
the,
then it won't be during the meeting.
We're gonna begin the meeting in about 2 minutes if they want to come and.
Yeah, I'm getting them, that's what I mean.
The members of the women's hockey team are here. We'll issue a proclamation to them today. We're very proud of them.
Good.
Do you need signatures, Jeff? Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay, no worries. Has Rochelle already signed? Yeah.
I've already signed. Yep.
Please, wherever you like. Thank you.
Strong women.
We'll begin our meeting in just 1 minute. So that's literally 1 minute.
Sarah's in Utah doing
Weightlifting.
Mm-hmm.
Is the image always that big? Is the image always that big?
That's what you look like.
You gotta be careful, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Ready to go? So begin tonight's common council meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed,
Present.
Counselor Armstrong.
Here.
Counselor Kelly,
Here.
Counselor Gibbs.
Here.
Counselor Ensel, Counselor McFarland, Counselor Moore.
Here.
I'd like to begin tonight's meeting with a very special recognition to a bunch of amazing women that we're very proud of, and their coach, who's probably got one of the best records in NCAA besides Jean Ariamo from UConn, perhaps. But you folks are just did an amazing job. This is what, your 7th national title, and we do want to issue you a proclamation tonight. Whereas the Plattsburgh State women's ice hockey team finished the 2018-2019 season with a 29-2-0 record, and whereas the women's ice hockey team at Plattsburgh State defeated Hamline University 4-0 in St. Paul, Minnesota on Saturday, March 16, 2019 to win the NCAA Division III Women's Hockey Championship, and I think a number of us will actually watch that on the webcast. Whereas the Cardinals' tradition of excellence continued for its 8th consecutive and 13th overall appearance in the Final Four national semifinal round, and whereas the Plattsburgh State women's ice hockey team continues to hold the distinction as the all-time leader in NCAA Division III women's ice hockey with 7 overall national championships, and now therefore be resolved that I, Colin Reed, Mayor of the Common Council of the City of Plattsburgh, do hereby congratulate the Plattsburgh State women's ice hockey team on its 2019 NCAA Division III National Championship title. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Fantastic.
So, So impressive. Thrilled. So great. Oh my gosh. Stars.
Thank you.
Oh, gosh. Thank you.
Thank you again. Appreciate it again. Thank you. Thank you for coming up. Thank you.
Good luck.
Do it again next year.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
That's always nice.
We have one other recognition. I don't think Bill Tracy could be here, but I'd like to resolve that I, Colin Reed, Mayor of the City of Plattsburgh, proclaim this week to be Dedicated Employee Week in honor of William Tracy and his team for their diligence and vigilance in protecting the ratepayers of the City of Plattsburgh. A lot of you know of some of the work that he's been doing on our behalf. At the height of the Bitcoin mania in 2016, he was deluged with demands for Plattsburgh Power. Since then, he worked with us to tighten building codes and petition the Public Service Commission to protect our residents and ratepayers from those who would make our valuable natural resource of sustainable electricity and provide little in return. Even today, almost 3 years later, Mr. Tracy is working to protect us with every legal means possible. The residents of the City of Plattsburgh are grateful for the effort of Mr. Tracy and his team, and the city thanks and honors MLD manager Bill Tracy and his team. I'll give that to him on his return.
Thank you.
That's all I have for tonight.
Resolved in the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on April 11th, 2019 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending April 17th, 2019 in the amount of $96,325.04 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Moore. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. You have the usual packet of reports. Are any additional reports, beginning with governance strategy and city operations? Councilor Armstrong.
Yeah, I think I indicated in my comments earlier that I would like to revisit the idea of OpenGov. We did have some deliberation among the Finance Committee and the mayor, and I hope to reinvigorate those discussions, especially in the light of our desire to be more efficient and save money. I think that really that this software is very promising. So that's something I hope to reinitiate. And then I just forgot to say, when I was publicizing Monday, that the PHS Green Team is going to be with us, and student speakers are going to be appealing to us. So I hope, I gave you this invitation more than a month ago, and I hope that you'll be there. I hope that you'll be there, because they need to be encouraged that we're really taking their worries about their future seriously.
Another issue you're working on is the tobacco-free effort. The number of young people from the community are out picking up all the various butts all around the city and literally filling up huge plastic bags of them. I really appreciate their effort
I read that that's
today.
one of the biggest pieces of debris in the ocean just recently. But following up on that, the Tobacco Free New York agency is going to be supplying us with signs, and I just need to get back with them and facilitate that.
Anything else? City infrastructure, Councilor Moore?
Another thing new to report, just want to remind everybody, we've had a lot of complaints about potholes, but we do have a paving plan in place that is going to take care of a lot of that. And I thank Public Works Department for spearheading that.
Finance and budget, Councilor Kelly?
We had our meeting today, and I'd like to thank Jeff Moore for chairing the meeting in my absence, and also to thank Mr. Marks for his excellent reporting on our 2018 results. Looks very promising, and we look forward to 2019 and to continue that goal of increasing our fund balance. It's very exciting to me.
Public Safety, Counselor Gibbs.
Well, I don't have any updates, but we will be having our regular scheduled meeting next week. So I look forward to that.
Public Library, can you speak on behalf of
I
Council?
can. They're going to be holding their meeting next week, and Peter and I will probably figure out who's attending.
And MLD Board President, Councilman Farr, who can speak, and who's the second on that?
Moore.
Councilor Moore?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, it's Counselor Kelly.
Councilor Kelly. Can you add anything wish to add anything for MLD, Councilor Kelly?
Oh, nothing to add at this time, no.
Resolved, the reports as listed are hereby ordered received, and any written reports are placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office. Moved by Councilor Gibbs and second by Councilor Moore. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. No correspondences or recommendations from boards at this time. Please continue.
Resolved that the bills lodged by the common council for the week ending April 19th, 2019, in the amount of $1,409,041.38 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. This is now an opportunity for the members of the public to please come address the council on any issue on the agenda tonight. There are agendas just outside the door there. Please come forward if you wish. Seeing none, let's continue.
Motion to remove item 7A from the table.
Seeing none, please continue.
Motion to remove item 7B from the table.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, second by Councilor Gibbs. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Discussion on the item itself.
Well, I think all of our significant concerns were addressed. I feel comfortable moving forward to make a decision on this.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves SIP located at 14 Margaret Street to use 2 parking spaces in front of their establishment for outdoor dining, seating subject to appropriate licensing by New York State Liquor Authority and subject to city permits issued by building inspector. All permits must be received prior to barrier placement. The city is asked to permit the licensee to use concrete barricades. The requested dates are from May 1st, 2019 to September 30th, 2019.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion. Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves that the mayor be authorized to sign change order number 3 to the post remediation monitoring and final engineering report contract with CT Mail in the amount of $2,600.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Moore. Discussion. Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Adoption of local law P-4 2019, a local law to provide for the codification of the local laws, ordinances, and certain resolutions of the city of Plattsburgh into a municipal code to be designated the code of the city of Plattsburgh. This local law shall take effect immediately upon approval by the mayor and filing with the New York Secretary of State, the entire text of which has been distributed to and read by the members of the Common Council, is hereby enacted without the reading thereof, and a copy of said local law is made part of the minutes of this meeting.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Moore. Discussion. And thanks again for that mammoth task. I know it was really huge. Really well appreciated. Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong? Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves adopting a refunding bond resolution for the purpose of creating savings in the city's future debt service of the 2009 and 2011 serial bonds currently issued and outstanding. The anticipated savings are estimated at $463,536 for the period beginning September 15th, 2019 through December 31st, 2030. The resolution form and the refunding issue projections are attached as supporting documentation for consideration of the bond resolution.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Armstrong. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
No travel requests at this time. There is one resolution for initial consideration that I think we've gone over in
Yep.
the work session and previously. And I'll come up again next week. Any new business?
When do you think the kind of like advertising and rollout of that solar option will be?
We want to try to put together a Plattsburgh energy plan. I
Oh, yeah.
think Councilor Moore was interested in working on that, and Councilor McFarland. I think it's going to need to have a number of dimensions. The theory here is that if we can create more conservation amongst our residents and commercial operators, that gives us a little more headroom below our quota to attract new businesses and industry too. So conservation will also translate into more jobs and economic activity. So I think it's not just a smart thing to do from a sustainability point of view, but I think it's smart from an economic development point of view as
Absolutely.
well.
Yeah. Good work.
And
Thank
that's
you.
also, I said this before, it's also a way to attract and keep, millennials and younger people, and, green jobs are the jobs of the future.
They are, and it's a value that millennials really find important. They want to live in communities that are sustainable, and that's the environmental justice side of it. There's also an economic justice side of it too, that maybe not everybody can afford to put up solar panels and that sort of thing. So we do need to worry about those that can't afford this sort of thing, try to keep our electricity rates low, prevent us from going over the quota, and figure out incentives to encourage people to sometimes do the right thing there, where they might just need a little bit of a helping hand to get there. And that IEP program I was telling you about, where we can offer rebates, is one of those enticements to do it. So I hope we can have a really multifaceted approach to show people why this is not just simply good for the environment, but also good for their own pocketbook.
And one thing I'd like to also see us move towards is, just like what you said, things that you can do within your own household. Maybe not everybody can afford to put solar panels up, but there are things you can do within your own home, which is, like household composting, for example, ways to reduce what we place in the landfill, just those kinds of things that aren't a huge expense, but they add up. And I think that's another avenue that we definitely have to pursue in the city.
Well, that's one of the actionable items on the Climate Smart program. I was just over in Burlington today, where they collect compost. It wasn't clear to anybody I asked who picks it up. So that's something worth researching. I mean, there are a number. I think I told you in Durham they collect compost, but it's private entities that do that. And I think that would then entail some kind of regulatory system, so that if you're going to embark in that kind of business, there would be, legal and sanitary rules that you would have to follow. But I have my compost picked up by a kid who has a huge garden in Rand Hill every week, and it's a big 5-gallon bucket full of just your organic waste. And now people in Burlington are also doing things like Ben and Jerry's had wooden spoons that they could compost, and there are compostable kind of little containers that, instead of going in the garbage, go in the compost. So it's a really promising thing, and a step that everybody can take.
Yeah, and I think that's what we should be looking at.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try and use some of the mayor's comments time to try to inform the public. A lot of times it's just a matter of people not being aware that these technologies exist.
Mhm.
Another example I'll highlight later on too is that we're also eligible for an IEP grant for installing heat pumps in our homes. They're operated from electricity, but they heat your home in a different way than resistance heating, with about a third the cost of resistance heating. So you can end up spending on a typical home in this area, or savings in a typical home in this area, somewhere between $500 and $1,000 heating that way. And the heat pumps themselves only cost about $1,500. So in a year and a half's time, that investment's paid off. So it's good for the environment, good for the city, but also very good for the homeowner too, especially if you get a $500 rebate from that as well. So it's just a matter of doing more education, letting people know how they can do the right thing. They can do well by doing good.
Okay.
So I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about that as we try to roll out this Plattsburgh energy plan. Last week I handed you out a CV or resume from an individual interested in taking our community economic, or what was the title of the position, community engagement coordinator. Councillor Kelly, Mayor Pro Tem Kelly, was with me to interview the individual probably about, 2 weeks ago? He
Yes.
couldn't be with us tonight. He's in the process of moving up in this, coming back home, moving up and looking for a job like this. But I would like to hand down the appointment of Scott Matthews for the position of Community Engagement Coordinator, Level 3 Manager, Compensation and Level 3 Benefit Policy, Range 5, Step 5, salary set at $55,400 for a minimum of 40 hours per week in the mayor's office effective May 1, 2019. And that would require a roll call vote
Okay.
for
Counselor
ratification.
Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
That's all I have tonight. Any other additional
Do you mind,
reports or?
discussing in a little bit greater length how that office is gonna operate?
Sure, this has all been now vetted with civil service. I think this idea has been floating around for probably about 4 or 5 months. As a matter of fact, I think Councillor Gibbs brought up first the need to have somebody who does more community engagement and public relations and that sort of thing. The hardest part was transitioning the previous events coordinator position into this redefined position. Probably took us 4 or 5 months with civil service to do all that honing. They only very recent, last couple of weeks, gave us final approval for this. So it took the existing duties from the events coordinator position, took some of those more day-to-day tasks, and we've employed a person in the recreation department, Scott Dubraid, to do some of the more day-to-day parts that the previous person had been doing. And then we added some more policy making in the area of community engagement. We kept many of the elements on the existing job description having to do with public outreach with sponsorships and all that sort of stuff. So we broke that existing position up into kind of high-level community engagement stuff and lower-level task and project-oriented stuff. And then we augmented it a little bit, working more with the departments and getting their message out and public relations, working with the media and that sort of thing. The other significant difference was that that person be working directly in my office, but CDO will probably be the other department most frequently employing that person because there is such an overlap with events planning already.
You're looking for a reinvigoration of the volunteer structure as well.
Right.
Which, I think part of what you did in agreeing to sponsor the April 27th event for Earth Week was kind of a way of using community volunteers to do something that was of benefit to the community on city property. So I appreciate that.
And this person will be doing much more of that. If you recall, we wanted for a long time to have much more volunteer engagement. And this person, that's really where his expertise is in kind of grassroots volunteer
I saw that.
engagement.
It's
So,
impressive, Avita.
yeah. Any other discussion or any items for tonight? Seeing none, we do have one other opportunity for public comment. If any individuals like to come and discuss any items of mutual concern with the council tonight. Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Moore. Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Thank you all for coming. Go out and enjoy this fine weather.
Some of the people I talked to said that they thought Casella picked up the compost. So, the what? Casella. They thought Casella, they didn't know, but they thought Casella picked up the compost.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't
I don't
either.
know if Casella is compost ready.
Yeah,
Scott Matthews.
okay, thank you.
Thank you
From
very
here,
much.
yeah, I grew
No,
up
thank
in
you.
Sharma, but he left to go to school.
Taskmaster,
He actually
hurry up.
Plattsburgh State graduate, top of his class in political science. I think he graduated about 6 or 7 years ago. Went off to graduate school and got a job in Florida for a while. He's always wanted to come back. Sure.
Oh, I know, where did you?
Geez, you know,
That was
it's,
an organization that kind of went by the wayside.
They go by the wayside. 30 City took over some of the stuff.